for my family. I've got 2 lovely daughters and a grandson and various other bits in the family, but rivers are my life. And I'm proud to stand here with a group of like-minded people sharing a similar passion with a landscape that's very, very close to my heart. So I'm just putting a stopwatch on here, so bear with me. So what I'm going to do for this 20-minute session is just to give you a quick overview of the type of work I have done in the last, sorry. Oops. How do I go to the, where's the back arrow on this laptop?
That's back and that's forward.
That doesn't seem to take me back to the first. Oh, it doesn't matter. Anyway, yeah, just a quick overview of the type of work I've done in the last 12 months or so and what I'm working on at present. So what I have been doing recently is a series of videos funded by British Society of Geomorphology with help from Aberystwyth Geography Department. And I'm very grateful to Stephen Howell and other staff here who have helped with equipment and so forth. So what we have on the top right there is using a stream tray. And I filmed elements of that. So these are stills from a video. So it shows you a cutoff there at the top. And then the idea is that students of various ages will be able to see how rivers work in terms of the dynamism and so on, erosion, deposition, features and processes involved. So in addition to that, I've got, sorry, I can't get my, how does it?
Click on the screen. Yeah, but you can see it here. See it here, maybe.
I can't. It isn't on here.
1 second.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
So this is an actual live meander. When we're talking about rivers cutting a bank, this is one on the river Severn. No guesses what happens next, but it'll help people understand the processes involved. Because in textbooks it'll show you lovely pictures of erosion deposition. So I've tried to complement that with videos of the actual processes themselves. And there's a lot of discussion involved in that. And that's at a place called Caesus on the Severn, which I'll talk about later on as well. And then also to help people understand rivers change dramatically very quickly in temperate environments as well as dryland environments like we've seen during the day, in the morning session. So the top one is on the Severn at Llanidloes. Flooding is getting more extreme in the UK. Flooding is a natural process, of course, but it's getting more extreme, more prevalent. But it also helps people see how rivers can change landscapes dramatically and quickly. And this one here shows you the power of the water and how they can move boulders, cobbles, erode, and so on. And then on the 2 right ones there are taken at on this last beat, because what I tried to do on the bottom right one there is to show how drainage patterns can work at a small scale. So we've got sort of headwaters at a very small scale there. Again, is trying to help people understand how they are literally linked together. The videos are better because it shows the movement of the water. And then you've got the equivalent of plateaus here in a way. So that you've got the little streamlets cutting through the uplands, which is very similar to what happens in Welsh uplands, Welsh plateau areas. And then the top one here shows you in real time headward erosion. So when we're talking about a gorge being developed and a waterfall retreating at a very basic level in sand, that's what it is. So over thousands of years, places like the Rheidol Gorge or if you want to go worldwide, the Niagara, for example, moves upstream, but does so over thousands of years. But in certain conditions on the beach, when it's very, very wet, you can actually see it in real time. So the idea I've tried to convey, whether it works or not, I don't know. I hope it does. It works for me. It'll be open for discussion if it works for students and teachers. But I think it helps convey how landscapes move and change over time and are dynamic and are constantly changing. And we've talked about human impacts. There's been a lot of discussion already about human impacts. So what I tried to do in the stream tray was to recreate some of those impacts and how bank protection is used or managed or not. It's just most of the time I've seen. So there's a couple of houses there. Scale is slightly off, so you have to bear with it. And then there's boulders, and then there's sort of little dowling rods to show banks being protected. Then you just let the stream run its course, and then over time it actually exasperates the situation. The boulders fall into the river, and then the water then gouges around the boulders and make it worse, and that then undercuts the bank, and eventually the houses topple in. It's a very simple, quick way to show, but we can show that in real life. This is on the Ystwyth, not far from here, a place called Gwinion. The road was closed for over about 12 months. So they've just put bank protection in on that stretch, two stretches actually, two sections. But already, since it was completed a few months ago, the river's already dismantling it. And there's a boulder there on the bottom here. And this has fallen down, the river's taken this. So this will be gouged deeper. My prediction is that the river will take all this sediment away very quickly over the winter. That's my prediction. I could be wrong. But it just shows you how things are managed without a real understanding of the power of rivers. I'm not being overly critical on that. I hope I'm not, but that is the reality, and I see that a lot. There is a great underestimation of river power on Welsh rivers in particular. They're very flashy, very fast, and that is one example out of many. And I've based the videos as themes on GCSE, the syllabus, which is roughly 14 to 16 years old in the UK. But obviously, I'm hoping that the videos will also be applicable to people of all ages. And then I've also based it loosely on the 10 reasons why geomorphology is important, especially the first 6. For example, landscapes are shaped by movement of mass. That's in every single video I've done. And then you've got things like landscapes are often complex, are the archives of the past. And then there's also human influences. And the last one, successful environmental management needs geomorphological knowledge. Well, we've already shown that with the bank protection. Then just moving on to other things I do quite a lot of community engagement work with various groups. This example is on a team at a place called Knighton, which is right on the border, Welsh-English border. And this is a 12-month project. I wasn't working on it full time, but I did a number of workshops with families, children, and the community in general. And it was a great project, doing some river-based activities, some artwork, some creative language work, some science. So you can see the erosion there. So there was a discussion. So how could we protect the bank? So I just said willows planted there would be good. There is quite an obsession in some parts of the UK that rivers should be dredged. So there's a misunderstanding with that. Dredging is not the answer. So it's just helping to have people discuss things openly. So there was a community event which I ran right at the end of the project in the village hall, or in the town hall, I should say. And there was a good discussion, and it's good to have people's views on it. And some were read openly, but others came up to me at the end and told me what goes on without some people know water extraction, for example, which can be quite delicate because it's a legal issue in some areas. And also the human links at the top, the history, the mills that were there, the weirs, the bridges, the social history, which I'm doing more of. So again, these are some examples of other talks I've done. Passion for rivers, then specifically on fluvial geomorphology, which I might do for geology clubs and so on. There's one just on potholes, happens to be a particular passion, you know, river potholes. And then specific rivers like the River Vyrnwy. I do some in Welsh waterfall Triadau Cymru. And then this one is coming up. That was fully booked very quickly. The one on salmon on the Vyrnwy. So there's one salmon there. Looks nice, doesn't it? Or does it? Because that's the reality of that particular site. And that's when we're talking about the conflict between ecology, hydrology, and everything else. So this is on the Vyrnwy, a place called Dylannog, an area I know very well. And that's a weir that was built in the 1920s, heightened in the 1990s, in the mistaken belief there was a barrier, that there's a waterfall on there, and they claimed it was the upstream limit to migrating salmon. That was totally incorrect. So what happens now is the salmon just literally can't go any further. What complicates it is a hydro scheme there as well. So I have been for a number of years trying to push for a fish ladder in there, and it is hard going, but there's a growing interest locally and regionally. And hopefully in the next few years, we'll be able to have a fish ladder. So when we're talking about salmon, this is what we mean. So this is an adult salmon jumping at Dylannog. This is a male salmon. But what it's doing here, it's spectacular, isn't it? But it's futile because it can't go any further. So that particular one has to come all the way back. And because of that, there's a lack of space for them to spawn. So there's a bit of a cul-de-sac, if you like. They should be able to go all the way up the river system, but they don't. And this can be replicated right across the country and worldwide. Salmon numbers are plummeting. Freshwater creatures generally, numbers are plummeting. It's very sad, but it needs to be said. But having said all that, I'm also very positive about the future because there's enough people on the planet to help make a difference. So really quickly, some of the other things I share. These are some of the invertebrates. You can see Dan's just walked in now. He was an expert on freshwater ecology, freshwater invertebrates. I'm not. I do love them, but I'm not an expert. So these caddisfly larvae here, and the top, middle, and this one here, this is something called the hydropsyche. I did an art project called Hydropsyche. They build nets using silk to trap food. So they build fishing nets underwater. I mean, you know, that's amazing, isn't it? Stoneflies. The middle one here is a mayfly, and them laying eggs underwater. So in other words, a whole world, and most of those are taken underwater. A lot of insects have their juvenile life cycles, a life stage underwater. Then they will emerge as adults, like this stonefly, and fly off. A lot of people say mayflies only live for a day. That's not true, strictly speaking, because they spend about a year or two, depending on the species, underwater as nymphs. And again, when I give talks, I help people connect with these either visually or ideally practically by going out and doing sampling. And hopefully if you do come out this afternoon, you can literally see those for yourself. And I have cases, I collect cases, empty cases of caddisflies, and I give them away to children and adults because they are very intricate, they're very beautiful, and they're part of the story. And then on the left, this is on the Ystwyth, place called Grogwynion again. Beautiful, isn't it? You've got a log there, you've got yellow iris. This looks like a chalk stream, doesn't it? Yeah. This is symbolic and important because this is at a site, that one there on the top, at an old lead mine, Grogwynion. So that was mined for lead. There's still heavy metal pollution in there, but it just shows you if you give rivers time and space, they will recover, and they will recover relatively quickly, even though there's a legacy of mining still there. But that's how it is today. Kingfisher on the lower right there looks nice, isn't it? But the reality is this: they have to deal with plastic pollution and lots of other kind of pollution. So that's just there as an example of what they do see. So that's on the upper 7. I saw lots of otters over the summer. I was lucky seeing lots of otters I saw a family of otters. Half the footage I took of them was with rubbish right by them. And that happens all the time, whether it's above or below the surface. So this is a caddisfly on plastic. So I saw a caddisfly larva building a case using plastic on the Elan River recently. Not all of it, but that will then be ingested by minnows and so forth. So it's a problem. There's far more pollution than just plastic, of course, agricultural runoff, road runoff, etc. But that's just a symbolic view of what's reality of Welsh rivers is. But what do we mean by a healthy, nice, clean river? Well, this is more like it. So the top 2 and the lower right is taken on a tributary of the Wye called the Bach Gwy or the Bach Howie, and full of large woody debris, lots of sediment. And the talk we had before about walking up rivers, this is the type of thing I do. I walk up rivers literally in various stages. Very difficult to get to, but it's very rewarding. Am I okay on time, James? What time did I start? Okay, just give me a shout if I'm going over. So this middle one here on the right, this is on a stream, and that's a natural leaky dam. So dams like that are important because they retain a lot of the water in the flood in valleys, and now they are being recreated artificially in lots of catchments. I was on the team recently, and there was 400 leaky dams in the upper valleys. Nature does it itself, of course. So what lots of management practices now are helping nature a little bit. But as we saw in Grogwynion, if you let rivers naturally recover, they will do so. And there's a tree fallen in the 7 there. A lot of people want to take trees out, for example. When you give talks, people will ask you, shouldn't you take trees out? Shouldn't you take all that sediment out? Those are the questions I get asked quite a lot. So you try and be respectful of the question, but you've also be quite assertive in your answer, I find. And this is the kind of landscape underwater. We've got lots of sort of leaf debris and so on, that building material and food. This leaf has been completely skeletonized by these shredders and collectors underwater. And then we've got sort of natural sculptures underneath the water, potholes, which I mentioned, as well as sediment itself is a kind of sculpture. I've got a stone here, a cobble here, which has been completely sculpted by the river. So it's in other words, it's a small pothole on its own. So when we talk about sculptures, natural sculptures, they're also moving sculptures. So this is how rivers create things like potholes by using sediment, cobbles this size. So we've got abrasion and nutrition in action there. So this is on the birdway. And there's also a crack in there, sediment gets trapped in there, and that increases that gap. Then over time, over thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, that will erode further and create even a deeper channel. So it just, videos like that is also going to be shared on YouTube with a British Society of Geomorphology grant. And then more recently, last 2 or 3 years, I suppose, I've been involved on TV appearances. So we got Spring Watch, Country File. It's okay. It's 5 minutes, takes hours. It's a little bit frustrating, if I'm honest, because you do say a lot on camera, and then they edit a lot out. They don't mention pollution. That's often edited out. But one exception in a way for geomorphology was this one on the right. That was on the Welsh TV S4C at Caesus. So we did talk about erosion and deposition. The chap I spoke to he was very keen actually on rivers, and it was nice to be able to talk to him about it, including this telegraph pole here, which had to be moved since we filmed there. And this is an aerial view of the Severn Valley. So I walked here with him and explained to him we were walking on the old river channel, and you can actually see the pools there still in place. So you walk along the channel and it's still you can see the old pool riffle. Then at the top there, you can see Llandinam. I want you to remember Llandinam Hall. I'll be coming to that in a minute. I'm working on an art project at the moment with 2 artists, one from Chile, one from Pembrokeshire, on the River Severn. And this is one of the sites I'm going to take them to. This is near Caesus. If you notice here, this is an old map from the 1890s, liable to floods. Liable to floods. You don't see that in maps, or OS maps now. So in other words, there was an acknowledgement then that the floodplains did flood. They were supposed to flood. If people would listen more to those kind of named developers, there would be less development on floodplains. Floods are increasing because of climate change and so on, but there is a case to be made for almost forgetting about those. Top right is a LiDAR image of the same location on the bottom there, just to show you the layers of the paleochannels. And then on the bottom right, this is from Google Earth, 2006. So have a look at this meander here. So this now, we're moving now over a period of 13.5 years. So in that time, the Severn meander moved over 55 meters. That's an average of 4 meters a year. And that's substantial for an alluvial channel like that. That's just one part of the bend. And then you've got this is in the floodplain now. So the river floods or flood over here completely, but the water stays. That's very important for flood management. It's natural flood management. And it's also good for wildlife. And then this is very recent. So somebody mentioned avulsion before. This is the river. This is the old river channel, and the river's literally cutting its own channel here, and it's still deciding which way to go. The channel isn't even there yet. It's flowing over grass at the moment, so that is a work in progress. The river will come back over here in flood. So it just shows you how rivers should be. They're dynamic. They should be dynamic. They should be allowed to roam across the floodplain. Very quickly to the end, with I'm aware I'm possibly going over time. This now is very recent. This is Clywedog, one of the valleys. I noticed Stephen's got a t-shirt there called Cofiwch Tryweryn, remembering Tryweryn, which is one of the classic Welsh drownings in the Bala, but there's many more. And this is one of them, a little known, and it's basically forgotten about. This is where I live. I live further down here in Llanidloes. This is the valley of the Clywedog in the 1940s. That's what it's like today. So it was built to help regulate river flow on the Severn, but it also involved drowning lots of farms. 10 of them, to be exact. The people living here were evicted. He refused to move, but they were evicted as a family. So I'm now following the history of that. I'm speaking to local people. So this photograph was taken by one of the locals in 1965. The same view today is that. There's a viewpoint overlooking Clywedog. Nice big map. Sailing club, fishing club. It makes no mention whatsoever about what happened. Doesn't mention the farms, doesn't mention the fact that people had to be moved, makes no mention at all of the impact of the dam on the river either. It will block sediment to stop fish migrating upstream. It's poor, and it's up to people like us to push and lobby and change. Very quickly, I'm sorry I'm going on. This is Dan's here. We're working on a project with Catherine Dwigan on somebody called Kathleen Carpenter. 200 years ago, she did a lot of work in Aberystwyth. She wrote the first textbook biology on freshwater ecology, freshwater biology. And we went out the other day, including to Pwllcrwn, on the top here. And there's Catherine. And I am going to finish the talk just on Catherine's quote from a preface. She's talking about the biology of rivers, but I want you to think about it in its context of the ecology, the geomorphology, and the biology. It is a world of infinite beauty, infinite variety, infinite charm, a world too which lies freely open for our exploration. So she was a scientist. She was ahead of her time. She was an important person, especially for Aberystwyth, especially for women. And Dan is literally following in her footsteps, and I'm doing a little bit to help. I'm producing a video to help, which is going to be shared. And then this is the very last slide, I promise. This is my favorite waterfall in the world. This is on the Sgwdi South Llyn Gwyn in the Brecon Beacons. So I'm sorry, I've probably gone over because for some reason the stopwatch stopped work. That's my excuse anyway. But I could carry on. But thank you for listening. I don't know if there is time for any questions, comments, or anything else. Aim. Yes, I'm looking to now. I have been in contact with the Severn Rivers Trust. Their argument is they're putting money in the lowest section of the river catchment. I've argued that unless you do something to the headwaters, there's little point of doing anything downstream. So I've turned their arguments against themselves. So they both should be done, shouldn't they? There's a lot of money spent on the Severn catchment, but it's very ring fenced in certain areas. The quote they gave me was 500,000, but somebody said to me, that's nothing to a water company. And that's what I am trying to get off the ground even more so now. So yeah, good point. How old is it next? It's determined to come down this one, isn't it? I'm fed up with it. Let's just.
Like we saw that one jumping. Like, would they eventually learn not to come back to that?
No, it's in their genes. Yeah, the reason they jumped there is it's in the DNA of their ancestors that they were able to spawn all the way up. This before Lake Vyrn was built, they went all the way to the bottom of the Derwent Mountains. But for those particular ones, like the one we saw there, they have to drop down a little bit, and then they have to find suitable substrates. It's got to be just the right size for them to be able to make their reds, which are these depressions in the river, but as I'm sure you know. But the problem with that there is there's a lack of space. So sometimes a female will dig into another female's. Yeah, there needs to be more research on that. But again, it happens in the Rheidol as well. There's issues in the Rheidol. You know, there's salmon coming up the Rheidol. You can have a look at. So it is but salmon is a representative species, isn't it? That we can do a lot with. There's a lot of stories. There's a lot of stories in Welsh mythology with salmon. It's in Mabinogion. So I do have a model normally. I take with me a big salmon like this. But they're all important. 4,000 creatures depend on British rivers. 4,000 species at least. So how old?
My question is on the same scientific, but taking weirs out seems to be one of the things that has been accepted as being, a very good thing. There's lots of EU projects that are run by LW to take weirs out, and you'd think that maybe that would be an easy win. Well, not an easy win, but you're pushing against.
You'd have hoped.
In some ways.
You would have hoped, but the complication there is the hydro scheme.
Right.
So they would have to be compensated somehow.
Who runs that?
Somebody in Derbyshire. It's a company, hydro. I can't remember for the life of me what it is now. I have spoken to them. I've made my feelings known in as polite a manner as I can. And yeah, I'm quite hopeful that in the future there will be something there. But yeah, if half our weir was damaged in any way, it would have to be rebuilt completely with a fish ladder in it.
Yeah.
That's legislation. But the one at Dylannog in particular is more of a dam. It's very steep. Salmon can jump 12 feet high, twice my height, but the pool has to be deep enough for them to jump from. There isn't one there. So again, to be honest, there's an arrogance in humanity that makes these structures even today, and I can get quite angry about it. But I'm also, as I said, very hopeful that there are enough people to make changes in rivers. And that's why everything we're all doing is important. They need everything. They need all the help they can get. Obvious statement, but it needs to be emphasized and emphasized and emphasized. And one final thing, it's really good for me personally to see so many young people who are doing research, good research, science, arts, and that fills me with hope for the future. And on that note, I'm going to end. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.